Thank you very much. I think as indicated, we'll start with the presentation. The presentation will show the current state of the industry and then focus on Reliance's entry and the particular offerings of Reliance and how it is impacting the industry and the incumbent players, and then open it up for questions. So those would be the main areas I expect to cover in the presentation. So let's begin. First of all, you'll notice that the contribution of the telecom sector, of which Reliance is a part now, is already been in operation in India for over 20 years now. It was one of the first industries to be liberalized. And so remember now that we have over 500,000 villages covered, contribute to about 6.1% of the GDP, contributes directly to about 22 lakh jobs and indirectly to 20 lakh jobs. We are the second largest private sector investment in infrastructure in India, committed and spent almost 750,000 crore rupees, among the highest contributors to government's revenue, 70,000 crore rupees per annum, and among the highest contributors to foreign direct investment in the country in the last decade. The context in which operators conduct their business is what you see on this slide. We have now about 1.32, so we've well past the 1.26 billion. So we've expanded our coverage. The internet users are at about 332 million and growing, and the active social media users about 134 million, and mobile subscriptions are a little more close to what 1.1 billion today. So some really large numbers, and clearly one of the largest industries presently operating in India in terms of reach. There's hardly any person in the population of India that is not being touched by the telecom industry in terms of usefulness, in terms of use, in terms of application, and in terms of contribution to lifestyles. So the first thing that we want to highlight is that COI welcomes the launch of RIL Jio. Reliance Jio is a member of the association. We have 6 members in total, of which RIL is one. The other major members are Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, Telenor, Aircel. These are the other member operators that constitute COI. We also have associate members like Sterlite, we have Facebook, we have Google, we have Microsoft, Ericsson, Nokia, on and on it goes, Qualcomm. So all of these folks are also associate members, so we have a large ecosystem that we represent, and so the joining of Jio is a welcome addition to the industry. RIL has been preparing their networks. They won Spectrum in 2010, and over the last 5.5, 6 years or so, they've been preparing their networks. It's a very complicated, very far-reaching, very state-of-the-art network. And so in addition to the network, they've also have to put in place a distribution network, a customer support network, and all of the ancillary services that make for a excellent consumer experience. So it's taken some time, but I believe they put together an excellent offering for the consumer, and that's what we want to talk about, and so we welcome them. I think it's good for the industry, it's good for our present-day incumbents, because we are at the beginning of the data growth story, and we need a lot more voices to educate the customer, to, as the demand increases, it allows for the equipment, both the handset and the infrastructure equipment, to be priced lower because of the volumes that we offer. So there is a pull that comes with more and more folks entering the industry, especially in the data field. And so this is another reason why the entry of Jio is a very welcome step for the industry. Next. We want to just highlight a few points of the Jio services. Mr. Ambani made a very compelling introduction of the services last week. Certainly very, very impressive in terms of the various factors that were highlighted. First of all, again, all of the member operators are welcome Reliance Jio. It is in the field of competitiveness and in the delivery of value to the end consumer that all operators will ultimately be judged. So again, RIL, I'm sure, will meet those expectations and exceed them. And so on that basis, they are clearly going to be joining a very competitively oriented landscape and set of operators. All right, the operators have indicated they're trying as best as they can within the parameters of their understanding of the license conditions and the TRI regulations to ensure that they are compliant with all of the policies and the regulations and the license conditions. The coverage, obviously, and quality of service will improve because Reliance has set a very high benchmark, and we expect that that will serve as an impetus for the operators who are competing to not only make sure that their networks are competitive and offer equally or better services, but also value to the end consumer is matched and perhaps also exceeded. So one of the things that we've highlighted is the benefit of free voice and affordable data, which is one of the hallmarks of what has been introduced by Reliance Jio. So really 5 things that you can really sum up, if you will, the Reliance Jio story. One, clearly, is the quality of their network. They position the network as core and critical to their offering. It's a 4G network, pan-India, offering speed, offering the ease of operation. So quality of service is critical. The second area that they've highlighted is to say that consumers' ability to do business with RGO, Reliance Jio, is going to be much easier. So they've tried to make it simple, easy to understand. So they've taken away surge pricing, special holidays and days when you have to worry about what you're going to pay. They're going to be introducing and using Aadhaar-based eKYC for filling out the forms when customers sign in. So there's a whole host of simplification to make it easier for the customer to do business with Jio. That is the second area. The third area is the bundle nature of services. They want to ensure that there's a whole host of services that are provided as part and parcel of the offering. Through December of 2017, we understand it will be free. So really a very compelling attraction to consumers. The fourth area is clearly affordability factor. That's one of the key factors that have been highlighted. And the affordability factor has to do with the pricing of data, the inclusion of voice as a freebie, and additional data-oriented applications that are also going to be provided free for a period of time. So all of this, we believe, is going to be a very, very attractive package for the consumer and has been highlighted as the core areas of which we believe and Reliance believes RIL is going to have an impact on the industry by having an impact on the consumer and the consumer experience. Next, please. So what are the issues that are highlighted anytime a new operator comes into the picture? And by the way, this is not new at this particular point in time. In 2001, we had similar types of issues on interconnect and inter-operator issues when Reliance Infocom was trying to initiate services. Subsequently 2002 or so when Tata came in, 2008 when 5 new incumbents came in. So there have been various points in time when new operators have started coming in, and these are not unusual issues, principally around the area of interconnect. I still recall when the incumbent operators started operations, we had significant issues with the then incumbent operator, which was the DOT, today's BSNL and MTNL. And interconnect issues was one of the first issues that was litigated before the then newly formed TRI. So points of interconnect and interconnect go way back to the very inception of the industry issue. So again, these are the areas, and increasingly what is being highlighted is obviously the asymmetry of traffic, because a significant amount of these applications are given away for free, voice is given away for free. It's a compelling attractiveness for consumers to use it, and of course consumers are using it, and that causes a great surge of traffic emanating from Jio's networks, landing on the incumbents' networks, and incumbents are now concerned about the volume and any costs that they may have to incur for carrying that traffic. So there have been various economic issues that have been highlighted by incumbents. Reliance has also indicated their response to that, but this is one of the critical areas. Some of the cost differentials on interconnect, some of the things that happen because of the volume of calls that are coming over from the Reliance network to incumbents networks. So these are some of the areas that have been highlighted as contention points. Again, please remember, nothing new, fairly common when new entrants enter the market. Happens not only in India but in other parts of the world as well. So hopefully the industry will resolve these matters along with the cooperation of the government, and we can move forward by focusing on what the customer is looking for and fair play among operators. Again, some of the issues that we've highlighted, the skew in the traffic. Usually operators experience a one-for-one. What does that mean? That means for every incoming call, there is an outgoing call. That ratio has now moved from 10-to-1 approximately, i.e. 10 calls coming from the Reliance network, voice calls to the incumbent networks, and that is causing a heavy load on the networks with some financial implications. Again, these are issues that then translate to what the MTC, which is the mobile termination charge of the regulator is, so we can talk about that. And so these are some of the issues that right now are being discussed among RIL and the incumbent operators and the government, which is at this particular point the DOT and the tribe. So here we're talking about evolution from 4G to 5G technology. We're already talking about 5G technology, and we're still struggling with 3G and 4G technology. As a very simple matter, just keep in mind that what is 4G and 5G, what is the principal differences? It's the underlying technology which promises faster speeds, and 5G technology is particularly geared towards meeting the demands of the Internet of Things, what we call machine-to-machine connectivity. So 5G is particularly geared to deal with the nuances of machine-to-machine conversations and communications and passing and receiving of information and all of that. So that is another factor of 5G. And it also promises higher speeds and throughput, which is a considerable interest of the operators as well as the consumers. All right, so again, you can see the numbers in terms of what is expected to be invested. Most of the advanced countries, the US and parts of Europe are moving, Korea, Japan, these are all fairly advanced countries that are now looking at 5G implementation, have kind of more or less done 4G. In India, we are still talking about 3G and 4G, 2G being a residual technology which is there principally because 80% or so of our consumers presently demand voice, and so voice is best delivered over a 2G technology which is specifically designed to carry voice. 3G, 4G, and 5G are increasingly network technologies that cater to data type of applications and uses. So this is just a snapshot of what has been invested to date. You can see the number of BTSs. I mean, a BTS is a cell site, and because in India we have infrastructure sharing, approximately 2 BTSs share a cell tower. So you can divide that number, and you can probably get an estimate of what the total number of towers are throughout the country. Network performance. These are commitments that have been made to the government of India in order to address the matter of call drops. All right, so the government was very concerned about the quality of service vis-a-vis incumbent operators, and these numbers that are represented over here represent the commitment of the incumbent operators to address the issue of call drop. So these are the incremental investments that are being talked about that are going to be invested, as you can see, in the next 100 days, commencing in June. All right, so this is a snapshot of what is going to happen to address network quality. Next, please. Thank you. So before I take questions again, please remember that all of this is being geared towards meeting the Prime Minister's focus, which is to connect the next 1 billion plus unconnected customers. The Honorable Prime Minister has a very good vision, a great vision of making sure that India lags behind no other country in terms of knowledge, know-how, and usefulness in terms of networks, and making sure that India lags behind nobody else competitively. IT has been one of the strong points of India's economy, and the Honorable Prime Minister wants to keep it so. So all operators, RIL included, and the incumbents are very focused on making sure we make the investments and the enhancements to the network that ensure that the Honorable Prime Minister's vision for a digitally connected India happens as soon as possible. So now we can open to questions.
Yes, the first question is from Siddharth Agarwal. He is asking, what will be the impact of Reliance Jio in rural areas in terms of data growth and competition?
Good question. I think Reliance, as per their license condition, is required to penetrate up to 30% of the block headquarters. As you know, block headquarters are one step above the Gram Panchayats, and so they aggregate up to the district headquarters. So that is a pretty aggressive rollout imperative. So we expect, and RIL has already rolled out well over 150,000 cell towers, which is a phenomenal number for any operator. And now they have pretty wide coverage in a lot of the rural areas. I think about last count, about 150 to 250,000 rural areas were covered. If you recall, India has about 500,000 panchayats and rural villages that are there. So still a ways to go, both for incumbents as well as RIL. But I'm sure that the rural coverage and experience will not be any materially different from what an urban customer will experience.
Next question is from Arjun Ghosh. What do you think price per GB of data could go down to for incumbents given Jio impact in financial year 2017 to 2019?
Okay, 2070 to 90. That's I think the licenses will probably come to an end before then. I think these are all 20-year licenses starting in 2010. So at the most, the licenses will last up to 2030. That is the brick wall, at which point they will have to ask for license extension or bid back for the spectrum. But the point I think that of the question is a good one, saying is that what is expected of price points. So at present, all of the incumbent operators are trying to understand what exactly is the offering from Reliance. Reliance has tried to keep it simple, has tried to clarify various issues, and so now the incumbents are looking at those price points, which obviously are resonating very well with the end user, because end users seem to be lining up in the hundreds and thousands in RIL's shops to get this. So the price point today, if one parses the numbers accurately or correctly, is somewhere at about 49 to 50 rupees per gigabit. As they normally say, terms and conditions apply. So we'll have to look to see what they are. I haven't gone through those in any great detail, but that's about the price point. Will the price points come down? It's a possibility, because what we traditionally seen is that as penetration increases, the per unit prices decrease. That's a natural phenomenon we see in the voice and saw in the voice revolution. We expect to see that in the data revolution as well. And what happens is that it subscribes to what we call the network phenomenon. The network phenomenon simply says that 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. 1 plus 1, because of the network impact, is closer to 4 to 5. So because of that network expansion, we get economies of scale. And because of economies of scale, it becomes more easier for incumbents to price the per unit cost below where it is today. So yes, there could be, secondly, understand that this is all electronics. So the cost of electronics comes down over time, becomes more powerful and cheaper. That's Moore's law. So we should see that kicking in as we go forward. Ease of doing business, hopefully some of the friction points that increased costs will also come down. If you look at the voice side, India was very innovative in introducing shared services and outsourcing. The whole world now looks at us and says, my God, how did you provide voice at such a affordable rate? And so I think this is something that operators are very good at doing. And so we should expect to see this also, these types of innovations happening. Also, please keep in mind that I talked about IoT, Internet of Things, machine to machine, cloud computing. These are all massive connectivity type of demand factors. And we expect that this will also create economies of scale. So in the aggregate, we expect that this will have a beneficial impact on pricing. So altogether, a very positive outlook in terms of price points going into the future.
Next question is from Kishan Mundra. The question is, how will the Jio impact data monetization by present and new data? Will there be a new ecosystem since they are giving so many services?
So I think what Reliance has been very good at doing is sort of bundling all of the services and making it very easy for the consumer to use this. And I think it's very much the strategy that was used by Apple. So one of the things that Apple did when it introduced its groundbreaking phone was, one, the extreme ease of use for the consumer, and two, a very rich iStore, if you will, that allowed you to download apps and use it within the confines of their app store. So I think we have a similar situation here where Reliance is putting together a bundle of applications that makes it very easy for the end user to access, to use, and to become part of the billing process. And so that is very attractive in terms of the ease of use and the affordability factor. And so in an individual basis, there's no one application that is any different from what a consumer can get from outside of what Reliance is offering. So for example, messaging apps, the use of the internet, the use of banking services, e-commerce, payment ease, all of these are applications that reside outside. Access to content such as media, movies, songs, all of this are also available outside. But I think the magic of the offer is that it's all sort of put and packaged together in an easy to use, very affordable, sometimes free, many times free, and making the end user's usage of it and the experience of it very beneficial and attractive.
The question is from Mr. Sunil. Can you please help in understanding whether Reliance Jio is making interconnect charges as of now? If so, how it impacts incumbent players?
Good point. So interconnect, let me demystify a very simple concept. When any two networks need to pass off traffic between one another, there's a physical connection between the two networks. And those interconnection points happen at various geographical locations. So in the context of our industry, the telecom industry, the industry operates in what is called licensed service areas. Government of India carves out the whole of India into 22 licensed service areas, most of which are contiguous with state boundaries, but not always the case. All right, so 22 licensed service areas called LSAs, and in each of these LSAs, there are multiple geographic locations, usually district headquarters. A district headquarters, for example, in Maharashtra would be Pune, Nashik, Ahmedabad, all of those major cities are the district headquarters. In each of those district headquarters, there would be a physical location where every operator that wants to hand off traffic to the other operator comes to. And then they have physical connections between the two networks and they pass traffic on. That's, in a simple way, looking at interconnect. So the TRAI has mandated that one, all licensed operators must provide interconnect to one another. Two, that they must not charge more than 14 paisa for every minute of call, voice traffic that is. Data traffic is free, by the way. Voice traffic, when it's exchanged, each operator pays to the other operator, depending on who originates and terminates, 14 paisa. And the third point is that it cannot be discriminatory. It must be non-discriminatory. That means similarly situated operators must be treated similarly in terms of the terms and conditions that are used in the interconnect agreement. Interconnect agreements are by definition bilateral. That means they're not made by one-to-many, they're made by one-to-one. Each individual operator enters into an individual bilateral agreement with the other operator for interconnect. So obviously the issue presently being faced between RIL and the incumbents is that RIL has asked for a certain quantum of interconnect volume, and operators are saying that, look, they do not understand why, because if they are providing this level of interconnects between them and RIL, it could swamp their networks in terms of volume, and it could put them at a financial disadvantage. These are arguments made by incumbents. We believe that the TRAI and the DOT will have to look into the validity of these claims and counterclaims between operators and decide what is the best way forward for the industry.
Question from Naveen Kumar. What would be the strategy of other operators like Airtel and Vodafone to give a strong competition to Reliance Jio?
So I think we should look at the 4 or 5 areas that Reliance itself says is going to be the focus of its offering. So I highlighted the fact that network quality is going to be very, very critical. So operators are going to have to make those substantial improvements and investments in their network, both in the quality and the coverage that they provide. The matter of call drops has got to be a thing of the past. Consumers are not going to be willing to put up with less than best quality. They're going to have to look at the speeds with which they enjoy data services, the clarity of the calls. So those will be aspects of the network that will be very important for operators to ensure that they're competing. Because price will mean nothing if the consumer experience is shoddy. And the consumer experience will have to do, first of all, with the quality of the network. So that's important. The second area, as highlighted by Reliance, is the ease of doing business with the end customer. And I think be it billing, be it activations, be it how you handle complaints, be it how you bundle these services and offer it, and ease of accessing these services. So ease of doing business with the operator is going to be another critical area. So that is where the competition will also have to focus. The third area is obviously bundled applications. Again, we talked about how Reliance has done a good job of putting together applications all together and allowing it to be very user-friendly and very affordable. So that is going to be the third area. The fourth area is obviously in terms of affordability. No operator likes to go head-to-head in direct competition with any other operator. So they take care to ensure that their pricing is not completely on a per bit to per bit or per megabit to per megabit, although people may try and reduce it down. Let me give you an example. For instance, one operator might say, listen, I'll give you 1 gigabit for, pick a number, 15 rupees or 20 rupees or 40 rupees. The other operator, instead of saying, oh, well, I'm going to give you that same 1 gigabit for the similar price, they'll say, well, if you're offering it for 20, I'll offer it for maybe 18, but, here's the terms and conditions. You can only use it for 6 hours. But that might be very useful for a user who only wants to use it for 6 hours in a particular day because of some application or a conference call that is over a data network or whatever that they need it for. So there will be this positioning of competitive offerings that will not be a direct competition but will be nuanced so that consumers will have the choice to decide what aggregation, what bundles, what price points, what terms and conditions they feel are appropriate for their use. Somebody just wants to use Facebook and is not interested in anything else, they should be able to get a package price for their particular needs. A student wants to work because of internet access, and that's really all they want, and their parents don't want them to be involved in Facebook and Google or any other social media. Well, that's a package that should be there. So I think this is where the competitive landscape will emerge once the whole issue of what is the price of a gigabit or a megabit and all of that, that's the initial phase, but I think it will soon move away from that.
Question from Ajay Purohit. What will be the effect on IP1 from this Reliance Jio launch and resultant competition generated in the market?
So the IP1s for folks is simply the infrastructure providers. So the infrastructure providers are the ones who presently build and own the towers and related infrastructure. So in the short term, initially, clearly it has been very beneficial for them because more towers have been built over the last 1.5 years than in the last previous 2 to 3 years or so because of the acceleration of business. So new operators coming in like Reliance Jio, incumbent operators expanding their footprint and filling in gaps in coverage. So that has been good news for the IP1s or the infrastructure providers, and you can look at Bharati Infratel, which went public, and their share prices, again, investors are seeing great value in that. So that's an example. Going forward, I think what is going to happen is that the network coverage is going to move more from the outdoors to indoors. And so I think this is going to be the new opportunity for IP1s as they focus on how do I make sure that I can provide the network operators with opportunities to get indoor coverage and to give the consumer access in hard to get at places. And so you're going to see places like railway stations, RWAs, high-rise buildings, airports, all of these places begin to start benefiting from indoor coverage. And I think the IP1s can play a big role in that whole opportunity. A third emerging area that IP1s certainly have a very good role to play is in the emerging space called Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi hotspots have to be built, they have to be maintained, they have to be operated, equipment has to be installed, they have to be maintained on a regular basis, power has to be provided, backup, all of the things that infrastructure providers are very good at. So the government has been talking about expanding Wi-Fi hotspot areas. Operators are very interested in that, and there's a significant opportunity for IP1s to play in that area as well.
Question from Ajay. What, as per you, would be the effect on upcoming spectrum auction from this Reliance Jio launch?
So I think the Reliance offering and the announcement has made it all the more important for incumbent operators to ensure that they can be competitive. So the first thing that it does is it really focuses on the financial well-being and health of the competition. So that is going to be key to the upcoming auction. So everybody who continues to aspire to play a dominant role in telephony in India has to worry about two things: network quality and network capacity. All right, so both of those are critically dependent about the amount of spectrum that you have. So therefore, the upcoming auction will be quite attractive in certain bands. So please remember there are at least 5 bands that are being offered for auction. There's the 25 megahertz band, there's the 23 megahertz, the 21, 18, 800, and 700. It's about 6 bands or so. So the attractive ones, because the handset ecosystem as well as the network ecosystem are most developed. They are most developed around 1800. So 1800 will see significant demand from operators that want to continue to focus on network quality, network expansion, network coverage. Next will be 21, 2300, because obviously these bands 21, 23 are what you offer 3G and 4G services on. 1800 also, by the way, will also be used for 4G LTE. That's why it's so attractive. So operators that have holes. So if a particular operator only offers 3G, 4G in 8 of the 22 circles, they may go in at this point and buy spectrum in the other areas where they don't have, because as you realize, Reliance Jio has a pan-India footprint on 4G. So obviously you want to position yourself as being competitive. Also remember that Reliance has done away with roaming. All the more reason why you need a pan-India footprint and feature. So I think for that reason, these bands, 23, 21, 1800 will be quite a bit in demand. We don't see a whole lot of demand in the 2500 range because the ecosystem is simply not there. And 700, again, because ecosystem is not fully developed for that band. And the second reason is that it is very pricey. The present incumbent operators certainly will have a hard time investing any large amounts of money just in that one band.
Question from Pooja Godara. How should the incumbent operators prepare to survive the price war initiated by Jio entry tariff plans?
So I think the best way to prepare yourself for any competitive type of move is to be absolutely focused on the consumer. What does the consumer want? What is the consumer experience demand? And make sure you're aligned up. And by the way, that's not new for telecom. That's the case for any other competitive area. The only time that you can ignore the consumer is if you're a monopoly or have some type of limited competitive area that you play in. Telecom has always been an extremely competitive area. We've at one point had 12 operators in an LSA. Obviously, that's reduced because of financial pressures. But again, in an extremely competitive environment, you must absolutely focus on the consumer. And what is the consumer asking for? The consumer is asking for a good quality experience on the network. What does that mean? Speeds that can be delivered for data. Right? Many will be using video. You don't want to have a handset and continually watch the wheels keep spinning. You want very quick downloads and uploads and interaction. So that's going to be critical. Coverage, you want to be able to use it whenever you go. In-building is going to be critical. Lots of use from in-building sources. So clearly, if you're going to focus on the consumer, you've got to focus on what the customer demands from the network. The second point, obviously, is in a country such as India, where we have such a large number of folks, in the bottom part of what we call the affordability pyramid. Affordability has got to be a particular factor, and so we have to learn how to tailor our offerings so that the uses that the consumer is demanding are met. It's not a one size for all. We've seen that on the voice side, and we expect that in the data side. That operator that best understands the end user experience and what the consumer wants is going to dominate and succeed. And again, by way of reference, you see that in Apple. Apple's not the cheapest by any stretch of the imagination, but they had such a compelling offer that the end consumer just made it such an aspirational device to have. And as you rightly realize, Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world today.
Question from Aditi. How will Reliance Jio impact the pricing trends of the telecom sector in India in the long term?
So I think Reliance has put forward very compelling price points. So I think they will dominate in terms of driving the value proposition. I think that will then begin to be compensated for and met by the incumbents. Otherwise, it'll be very hard for them to continue to compete against RLGO type affordability factor. So I think Reliance will continue to sort of lead the way if at all if the current trends are going forward. But again, please remember that one thing we realize in our industry is that technology changes very quickly. Today, Reliance has introduced a 4G LTE network. It's a very compelling offer. It's a state-of-the-art network, state-of-the-art technology. But as we notice, we're moving to 5G. We're moving to Internet of Things. We're moving to cloud computing. Who knows what other disruptive technologies are in the horizon. Today's innovator can be tomorrow's dinosaur. So again, I think all incumbent operators, and Reliance included, have to continuously keep their eye on what is coming down technology-wise, improvement-wise, consumer choice-wise, consumer preferences-wise, what's happening. And so I think this is going to be the factors that impact not only Reliance, but every other incumbent as well.
A question from Ashish. Do you think telecom consolidation is near with the launch of Jio, especially for smaller operators like Tata Docomo, Telenor, etc.?
So Ashish, I wouldn't characterize Tata Docomo as small by any stretch of the imagination. They may have been small, certainly in terms of, or relatively smaller in terms of subscribers, but certainly in terms of financially, they are some of the best financially capitalized companies anywhere in the world. So I think, but your question, what is going to happen vis-a-vis consolidation, what's going to happen in terms of the impact of some of the smaller players by way of coverage and subscribers. Clearly, I believe Tata has indicated that they are looking for a buyer for their business. So I think that is out there. So it's expected that they'll either merge, consolidate with somebody. And already you realize that the marketplace has consolidated as a result of the introduction of sharing, spectrum sharing and trading practices. So today, as we speak, Aircel and MTS are planning to merge or be acquired by Arcom. So already from 3 operators, you're coming down to 1. Videocon has sold the bulk of their operations. They're principally out of the business. So for all intents and purposes, we're talking about 4 major private operators. Telenor continues to be a regional operator, a very compelling operator in the regions in which they operate. They will have to decide how they're going to position themselves on a pan-India 4G, free data and free voice use, no roaming charges, this type of offering. I think they have some calls to make, but already consolidation is taking place. We have 4 majors, RIL, Arcom, and it's Aircel, MTS, kind of all playing together, if you will. Then you have Vodafone, Idea, Airtel as the other 3 major incumbents. And then, of course, you have BSNL, MTNL as the government PSU entity.
Next question is from Rajesh. Does voice revenue of incumbents will impact it? If yes, how will it impact the next auction of spectrum coming next month?
So Rajesh, in terms of what is being impacted, clearly remember that at a minimum, the price point for voice cannot go below the interconnect price point set by the regulator, 14 paisa. So I think that forms kind of a base amount, even when it is given away free, quote unquote, to the end user. RIL will have to pay the incumbents that for the incumbent. So, but clearly, voice prices are under pressure. and everybody is moving towards a data-oriented network because that is the network of tomorrow. So in that case, you'll notice that all of the spectrum bands that are being auctioned and that will be acquired principally for data usage. And voice will be carried over data networks, much as you see Reliance doing on their 4G network. The Reliance network is a state-of-the-art data network in which voice is carried through a technology called VoLTE, V-O-L-T-E, or VoLTE, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So going forward, that is the fundamental paradigm, an all-data network in which voice is also carried. The only point is that incumbent operators have about 650 million voice users, and so they will have to learn how to migrate those voice users out of an all-voice network into a hybrid network and ultimately to an all-data network. So I think that's the challenge for the incumbents. Reliance is already there, and so this is an area where, because of the additional capacity requirements, please remember, once you have an all-data network, it is going to be principally oriented towards video. Video demand puts a lot of capacity requirements on the network. So the demand for spectrum, because our networks are all mobile networks, we don't have very much landline infrastructure. Because of that, the demand for spectrum will always be there, including for the upcoming auction.
Question from Aditi. Will Reliance disruptive pricing strategy have a major impact in the telecom industry, or it's just a momentary hype?
I don't know that it is destructive. It is certainly competitive, Aditi. So I think the incumbents and RIL will have to determine if at all it's going to harm them financially. Some of the incumbent operators have made the particular presentation to the DOT and the TRI, saying that yes, under the present arrangements and the present flows of volume, there is a danger that incumbent operators might face severe financial pressures arising out of these present practices that are there in the industry, especially with Reliance in Jio coming into the marketplace. But I think the industry will have to adjust within the parameters of level playing field. And I think one of the areas that we need to look at is we need to look at enabling regulations and enabling policies. We cannot continue to operate in an ad hoc manner, especially in an area when networks and operations have just leapfrogged in terms of technology. So the challenge presently is saying, how does the policy, which is the licensor world, and the regulatory world, which is the TRI world, how do they keep up and make sure that operators are being unshackled from unnecessary regulation and conditions, license conditions? Now, let me give you an example. Clearly, what we see as referred to as OTT players, over-the-top players, these are players like WhatsApp and others, who embody or embed voice in data packages and send it as a data package. All right? That is the march of technology. We recognize it. Where does the rub come? The rub comes because if I want to do the same thing, I'm going to have to pay 14% of every rupee that I earn from that to the government. WhatsApp does not have to pay that. So you can see the asymmetry of two operators offering or wanting to offer the same thing, one shackled because of a government policy license requirement, and one unshackled. So our point is that, hey, listen, let's make sure that we use the same rules for the same services. So this is an example of what we talk about in terms of making sure that the policy environment and the regulatory environment are fair to everybody who wants to play in a very fast-changing, technologically growing environment.
This is probably our last question as we are running out of time. The question is, will the entry of Reliance Jio trigger a price war that would affect the profitability of the incumbents? Will this also have an effect on bidding for the spectrum?
So very clearly, as the incumbents and Reliance Jio fight for position and market share and customers and the valuable customers and enterprise customers, there will be some short-term sort of loss of revenue to some, gain of revenue for others. This is part of the play of the competitive marketplace. As long as the marketplace is kept in a level playing field, I think that's all incumbent operators and Reliance hopefully is asking for. Make sure that nobody is gaming the system in any way which makes it inappropriate. I think that's the particular concern. So yes, in the short term, to answer your question, there is expected to be some impact on profitability as incumbents try to deal with the perception in the consumer mind or the reality in consumers' mind of the price points and trying to match it, trying to obviously retain consumers, retain enterprises. They may have to give them extra benefits to match. So that will clearly impact in the short term. In the longer term, I think the opportunities that I've highlighted, like for example, the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, by the way, is expected to go up to, by very conservative estimates, 5 to 6 billion connections. That's more than the global number of mobile connections we have today. So if we get any part of that share, it'll be great news for the operators who operate. So that's clearly an opportunity. So today, pain, tomorrow, significant opportunity. And if the industry is smart enough, we will learn to monetize this. Same thing with the Internet of Things and the cloud computing world that is emerging, and who knows what other technologies. If the industry is smart, we can all share in this growing pie without having to kill anybody, especially when the competitive landscape is free, it's open, it's transparent, and it's fair. So now the question of will it impact the upcoming auctions or any subsequent auctions? Yes, insofar as the demand for spectrum will always be there. And so other things being equal, if the affordability factor, i.e. the price points for spectrum is reasonable, you will see a significant demand for spectrum. Presently, what constrains the purchase of the spectrum is the very high prices. We pay 30% more for megahertz of spectrum vis-a-vis global competitors pay for the same megahertz of spectrum. So that puts us at a disadvantage. 30% for every megahertz of spectrum we acquire vis-a-vis global standards. If we want to make India a sovereign superpower, these are some of the things we're going to have to address.